Can I fix it for food?" They mocked the poor homeless man, not knowing he was a racing legend. A starving beggar stood at the entrance of a luxury workshop, his clothes torn, his face hollow from hunger. In front of him gleamed a McLaren, its hood raised, its proud owner frowning at the stalled engine. The man's voice was steady, despite his trembling frame. "I can fix that car, if you give me some food." Every mechanic in the room froze. Then, laughter erupted. Victor Coleman, the arrogant shop owner, leaned against a workbench, smirking. You look like you can't even fix your shoes, and you think you can touch a McLaren?" Tom Bennett and Ethan Ward, his mechanics, joined the chorus of ridicule. They whispered about recording the scene, convinced it would be comedy gold. But Laura Mitchell, the only woman in the room, didn't laugh. She noticed the beggar's eyes, sharp, unshaken, almost practiced. The tension thickened. The McLaren's owner, Olivia Parker, shifted uneasily, watching the strange exchange. Could this ragged stranger possibly know something the professionals didn't? Victor sneered and crossed his arms. "All right, Phantom, show us your miracle. But when you fail, you walk out hungry." The beggar stepped forward, placing one hand on the sleek carbon fiber hood. Nobody in that room imagined the storm of revelations his touch was about to unleash. The mechanics kept laughing, their voices echoing across the dim workshop. But Michael Harris did not flinch. His fingers traced the McLaren's hood with quiet reverence, as if he had done it 1,000 times before. To the others, he looked like a broken man, clinging to a foolish dream. To Laura Mitchell, there was something hauntingly familiar in his composure. As if beneath the ragged clothes stood someone who once knew greatness. Long before hunger hollowed his cheeks and shame bent his posture, Michael had lived another life. He had once been the man every journalist wanted to interview, every sponsor wanted to sign, every rival wanted to beat. His wife Emily used to say that the world seemed brighter whenever Michael walked into a room. His daughter Lily believed her father was invincible, that nothing could touch him, not even fear. But memory can be cruel, replaying not only moments of triumph, but also the instant when it all collapsed. In one race that was supposed to seal his legacy, destiny turned savage. A miscalculation on the track led to a crash that should have claimed only his career. Instead, it stole everything else. Lily, watching from the stands, suffered a heart attack from the shock and never recovered. Emily, consumed by grief and unable to forgive, slipped into despair and ended her life 6 months later. Michael survived, but survival was his punishment. He walked away from the circuits, from sponsors, from a fortune most men would have killed to keep. He sold everything, donated much of it quietly, and disappeared. For years he drifted through, streets nameless and faceless, his only possessions the weight of his memories and a faded photograph of the family he had failed to protect. Back in the workshop, Victor Coleman folded his arms and smirked, completely unaware of the storm that lived inside this stranger. "Gentlemen," Victor called out, "watch closely. Tonight, we are about to witness the most expensive comedy act in town." Tom Bennett snorted with laughter, already unlocking his phone to record. Ethan Ward leaned on a wrench, grinning like a schoolboy waiting for a prank to unfold. Their eyes saw only a beggar, desperate enough to barter dignity for bread. Laura Mitchell, however, noticed the details no one else cared to see. The way Michael scanned the McLaren's engine bay, not like a hungry man guessing at wires, but like a surgeon reading a patient's chart. She had spent years in greasy overalls, earning her place in a shop where men dismissed her for her gender. Confidence in silence was something she recognized. Michael lifted his eyes. "Give me a chance," he said softly, though every word carried iron. "Not for charity, not for pity. A sandwich, and I will show you what I know." Victor chuckled, pretending to consider it, though in truth he had already made up his mind. "Fine, You have your chance. But understand this, Phantom, he said, using the mocking nickname he had heard Ethan whisper. When you fail, you will walk out of here humiliated, and I promise you, the world will laugh along with us once this video goes viral. The room buzzed with cruel amusement. Tom muttered about how it would be fun to add music and captions before posting the footage online. Ethan doubled over laughing, imagining the comments pouring in. But Laura did not laugh. Her gaze followed Michael as he slowly rolled up his sleeves, exposing scarred arms that looked more like they belonged to a fighter than a vagrant. He placed his tools gently on the bench, the way a pianist rests his fingers before playing. Inside her, an unspoken question formed. Who exactly was this man? Why did his voice not tremble when every eye in the room mocked him? Why did his touch on the car seem almost intimate? The sandwich Victor promised never arrived. Hunger gnawed at Michael's ribs, but hunger was a companion he had long grown accustomed to. What mattered now was the challenge, the chance, to feel alive again, even if only for 2 hours. Somewhere deep inside, the ghost of the man he used to be stirred. And in that moment, the workshop had no idea that history was standing in its center, disguised as a beggar who had nothing left to lose. The sound of sharp heels striking the concrete floor shattered the uneasy laughter inside the workshop. Olivia Parker, dressed in an immaculate white coat that contrasted with the grease-stained walls, strode in with eyes blazing. Behind her trailed an assistant clutching a leather folder, but it was Olivia who owned the room. She did not waste time on pleasantries. Her voice was crisp, commanding. Victor, I am not here for excuses. That McLaren is still broken. Your people failed, and I am running out of patience. Every mechanic stiffened. Tom scratched the back of his neck, avoiding her gaze. Ethan leaned against the workbench, smirking as if the entire situation were a joke. Only Laura dared to meet Olivia's anger with calm composure. Victor forced a smile, but it looked brittle. Olivia, trust me, we are handling it. These cars are tricky. Even the dealership wanted $80,000 just to swap out a part. But here, he suddenly paused, his eyes narrowing at Michael. A cruel idea flickered across his face. Victor gestured toward the ragged figure near the corner. In fact, maybe you would like some entertainment. This man here claims he can fix your car. He wandered in off the street begging for food. Olivia turned, her gaze falling on Michael Harris. For a moment, her expression softened, noticing his hollow cheeks and torn jacket. Then her skepticism returned, sharpened by years of dealing with frauds and opportunists. Really? Him? This is a McLaren, not a bicycle. Victor chuckled darkly. Exactly. Let us see the beggar embarrass himself. If he fails, I will personally make sure he never steps foot in here again. The shop erupted in laughter again. Tom pulled out his phone, already recording. Ethan egged him on. This is gold. Wait until people see this clown online. Laura frowned, folding her arms. Something about Michael's eyes unsettled her. They were not the eyes of a desperate liar. They were steady, almost serene, as though he had walked into a challenge he already knew how to win. Michael did not flinch at the ridicule. He looked straight at Olivia. His voice was soft, but it carried. Give me a chance. 2 hours. A sandwich for payment. Nothing more. The assistant whispered in Olivia's ear, urging her not to waste time. But Olivia hesitated. She studied Michael, noticing the quiet conviction in his tone. He was not pleading, he was making a promise. Against her better judgment, something inside her leaned toward him. She sighed, tapping her fingers on her folder. Fine, 2 hours. If you fail, you walk away and never bother us again. Victor clapped his hands, delighted. Perfect! Then it is settled. The air shifted instantly. What had been a night of routine repairs now became a stage. The mechanics gathered around, eager for the show. Michael approached the McLaren, his shadow stretching long under the harsh fluorescent lights. He placed both hands on the hood, closing. his eyes briefly, as if reconnecting with an old friend. His fingers traced the curves of the car, every movement precise, deliberate. His nails were dirty, his palms rough, yet his touch had the gentleness of a craftsman who knew exactly where to press and where to pause. Tom sneered, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Look at him, acting like the car will talk. Back." Ethan snorted, holding up his phone. "Maybe it will tell him it needs spare change." The jeers bounced off Michael like rain against stone. He crouched, sliding under the chassis, eyes scanning every nut, every wire, every hidden detail. His breathing slowed, his focus absolute. Laura's curiosity grew. She stepped closer, trying to see what he was looking at. The more she watched, the clearer it became. He was not guessing. His movements carried the rhythm of memory, like a pianist playing a song from long ago. Victor leaned against a workbench, smirking. 2 hours, Harris. The clock is ticking. Michael's voice echoed from beneath the car. "I will need tools." Victor raised an eyebrow. "And why should I trust you with my equipment?" Olivia cut in firmly. "Give him what he needs." I agreed, remember? With a reluctant grunt, Victor waved toward the shelves. Ethan tossed a wrench onto the ground near Michael's feet, laughing when it clattered noisily. "There you go, champ." Michael picked it up calmly, unbothered. His hands began to move swiftly, dismantling sections of the engine that no one else had dared touch. Sparks flew as he loosened bolts that had been stuck for days. He hummed under his breath, a faint rhythm that only Laura seemed to notice. Tom whispered, "This is ridiculous. No way he actually knows what he is doing." But the minutes ticked by, and doubt began to creep in. The laughter softened. The sound of metal meeting metal filled the workshop. Sweat glistened on Michael's forehead, but his hands never trembled. Laura caught herself holding her breath. For the first time that evening, she felt anticipation stirring. Who was this man, really? 2 hours might decide more than just the fate of a broken car. It might decide whether a ghost from the past could reclaim the life he had buried. The ticking clock loomed, and suspense thickened with every turn of the wrench. The workshop grew quiet, except for the steady rhythm of tools in Michael's hands. His movements were not frantic, but deliberate, like a man who had already mapped out every step in his head. Where most mechanics would replace entire parts, he traced wires, rerouted connections, and recalibrated sensors with adjustments so fine that even Laura had to lean closer to follow. Ethan nudged Tom, whispering loudly, "He is going to break it even worse." "Just wait." Tom smirked, recording the scene on his phone. "Let him. This is gold. Imagine the views when people see a beggar pretending to fix a McLaren. We will go viral by morning." Michael ignored them. His lips moved, softly as he worked, muttering terms that did not belong in an ordinary garage. Telemetry drift, hydraulic response curve, just like Monaco 09. Laura's eyes widened. Those were not words a drifter should know. They were phrases she had heard only in racing documentaries, used by engineers who built cars for legends. She felt a chill. Who exactly was this man? Olivia, standing a few feet away with her arms crossed, tapped her foot impatiently. "This is taking too long, Victor. He looks like he is just tinkering. I do not have the whole night." Victor smirked. "Patience, Olivia. Let the man play. The longer he drags this out, the funnier his failure will be." But Michael did not falter. His hands worked with the precision of a surgeon, threading wires through narrow gaps, adjusting valves by fractions of a turn, and tightening bolts with a craftsman's instinct for pressure. Every click, every spark of metal against metal, carried purpose. Time crept forward, the 2-hour deadline closing in. Tom kept whispering, "Any second now, the whole thing will blow." Ethan chuckled. "If it does not, I will eat my wrench." Laura shot them a sharp glare. "Shut up and watch." Michael finally slid out from beneath the car, sweat glistening across his brow, his shirt clinging to his thin frame. He looked exhausted, but strangely calm, like a man who had just fought a battle and knew the outcome. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at Olivia. "It is ready." A ripple of disbelief spread through the room. Tom lowered his phone, blinking. Ethan stopped laughing. Even Victor's confident smirk flickered for a brief moment. Olivia frowned. "You are certain?" Michael simply nodded. Without another word, he reached into the McLaren, pressed the ignition, and twisted the key. The engine responded with a roar so pure, so smooth, that the very air inside the workshop seemed to vibrate. The sputters and warning lights that had plagued the car were gone. Instead, it purred like a beast awakened, every note of the engine's song precise and flawless. For a moment, no one moved. The sound filled the space, erasing every doubt. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "It is perfect." Her voice cracked, disbelief melting into awe. Laura's eyes shone with quiet triumph. She knew she had seen something rare, something extraordinary. Ethan's jaw dropped. "No way! That's impossible." Tom stumbled, still holding his phone, his face pale. He actually fixed it. Victor's reaction was different. His face twisted with anger. He stepped forward quickly, waving his hands. No, this is a trick. He must have gotten lucky. Anyone could have stumbled on the issue." Michael shut off the engine, standing tall despite his ragged clothes. "That was not luck," he said firmly. "It was knowledge. Knowledge you dismissed before I even touched the car." Victor sneered, his voice rising. "Do not act like you are some genius. You got one lucky fix, that is all. If you think this proves anything, you are wrong." Tom, in a panic to cover the shift in mood, quickly hit upload on the videos he had been recording, thinking the internet would laugh at Michael, just like they had. He never realized that those very clips would soon expose Victor's arrogance to the world in ways none of them expected. Olivia, however, was not laughing. She walked slowly around the McLaren, inspecting every sound, every vibration. Her face grew more serious with each step. When she finally turned back to Michael, her eyes were filled with respect and curiosity. "Who are you?" Michael did not answer right away. He simply looked at her, then at the stunned faces around him. For the first time that night, the balance of power inside the workshop had shifted. The beggar had just outshone them all. Whispers swirled around the workshop as the McLaren's engine cooled, its steady hum still echoing in their ears. Michael wiped his hands and turned toward the door, his body language quiet, almost apologetic. He had delivered proof of his skill, but he had no desire for applause. To him, the fix was not glory. It was survival. Laura, however, could not let it rest. Something gnawed at her. The way Michael's fingers traced each part with such confidence. The terms he had muttered under his breath. Things no casual mechanic would know. And then that single word he had whispered earlier. Monaco. She had heard it before, in a racing documentary about a legendary driver who had done the impossible on the streets of Monte Carlo. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled out her phone. She typed his name into the search bar, Michael Harris. The results hit her like a thunderclap. Headlines flashed across her screen. The Phantom of Formula One, Michael Harris claims third world title. Clips filled the screen, grainy footage of a younger Michael overtaking rivals in breathtaking maneuvers, reporters shouting his name, fans flooding tracks with banners that read, "Go Phantom." He had been fearless, unpredictable, almost untouchable. Laura's breath caught when the next results appeared. A flood of articles from years later. Champion Michael Harris withdraws from racing after family tragedy. Pictures of a car crash, a funeral, a man walking away from cameras with his head bowed. The glow of fame had shattered overnight. Her throat tightened. This beggar, this starving man they had mocked, was no ordinary drifter. He was the Phantom himself, the man who had once ruled the racing world. Laura's gasp drew the others. Tom and Ethan peered over her shoulder, their laughter gone. The phone's screen reflected in their stunned eyes. Victor crossed his arms, already bristling, while Olivia leaned closer, her face pale. Laura's voice trembled as she spoke. "It is him, Michael Harris, the Phantom, 3-time Formula One world champion." The room erupted. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "No way. That guy, he was on posters in my cousin's room. That is impossible." Tom muttered. I watched his last race on television. I thought he disappeared. I thought he died." Olivia's lips parted, her voice barely audible. "I remember him. He was a legend." Victor barked out a bitter laugh. "This is nonsense. You people are desperate for a fairy tale. Look at him. He is nothing but a washed-up beggar. You really think the man who once held millions in endorsements is standing here in rags begging for food? Do not insult my intelligence." But Laura refused to back down. Her thumb scrolled through the evidence, images of Michael holding trophies, video interviews where his smile lit up the screen, articles chronicling his unmatched precision on the track. Every piece matched the man standing in front of them. The jawline, the eyes, even the scar above his eyebrow, earned in a crash at Silverstone. She held the phone out, her tone sharp. "This is undeniable. You can argue all you want, Victor. But the truth is right here. He is not a fraud. He is not lucky. He is Michael Harris." All eyes turned back to Michael. His shoulders slumped under the weight of recognition he had tried so hard to escape. He shook his head, voice low. "That man is gone. He died the day his family did." The words struck the room like a hammer. Silence pressed down on every corner, broken only by the faint ticking of the McLaren's cooling engine. Michael stepped toward the exit, his steps heavy. He wanted to vanish before the questions came, before the internet filled with his name again, dragging his pain into the spotlight. Fame had once crowned him, but now it was a wound that refused to heal. Laura moved quickly, blocking his path. Her eyes shone with urgency. "Michael, wait. You cannot disappear again. The world still needs you. People like me, people who believed in the impossible. We grew up on your races. You inspired millions. That does not just vanish because of tragedy." He closed his eyes, pained by her words. "What good is inspiration when I could not even save my own family?" Her voice softened. "Because you are still here. Because someone out there is waiting to see that a man can rise even after falling this far. That is why you matter." Victor's voice cut through the moment, sharp and venomous. "Do not listen to her, Harris. You are a fraud who is good at fixing engines, nothing more. If you were really the Phantom, you would not be here scraping for scraps. Stop clinging to a past that no longer exists." But for once, Victor's words did not land. The tide in the room had shifted. Tom and Ethan, once mocking, now looked at Michael with a mix of awe and regret. Olivia's gaze lingered on him with a newfound respect, and Laura stood firm, unwilling to let the truth be buried again. Michael's secret was no longer hidden. The Phantom had returned, whether he wanted to or not. The workshop door creaked, open, letting in a gust of cool night air. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in an immaculate suit, his presence commanding silence. Even Victor stopped mid-sentence, his face paling as he recognized the man. Richard Sterling, a name that carried weight across industries, motorsports, technology, finance. Wherever Sterling invested, empires rose. His eyes scanned the room and locked on Michael. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice both sharp and reverent, he spoke. "The Phantom, Harris. I never thought I would see you again." Gasps rippled through the workshop. Ethan's wrench slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Tom froze, phone still in his grip, as though the confirmation from someone so powerful made the truth undeniable. Olivia's lips parted, recognition dawning in her eyes. Michael lowered his gaze, shoulders heavy. "That man is gone," he murmured. "Do not call me that." Sterling stepped closer, ignoring Victor's sputtering protests. "You can deny it all you like, Michael, but I watched you rewrite history on the track. I watched you do things behind the wheel that no one believed possible. You were not called the Phantom for nothing. And tonight," he gestured at the humming McLaren. "You just proved you still carry that brilliance," Victor snapped, desperate to regain control. "Mr. Sterling, with respect, do not be fooled. He got lucky. My team could have fixed that car if given more time." Sterling turned his cold, steel-gray eyes toward Victor. "Do not insult me. I have owned McLarens for 20 years. I know the difference between luck and mastery." His voice dropped, sharp as a blade. "And mastery is something you clearly lack." Victor flinched but said nothing more. Sterling returned his attention to Michael. "I will not waste words. I am building an elite division, engineering, racing, innovation at its highest level. I want you at the helm, not as a mechanic, as a leader. Millions of dollars, the finest resources, the freedom to shape the future of motorsport. The world may have forgotten you, but I have not. What do you say?" The room held its breath. Michael's hands trembled at his sides. The offer was everything a man could dream of, but for him, it felt like a blade pressed against old scars. He shook his head slowly. "I cannot. You do not understand. I lost them. My wife, my daughter, everything I loved. Driving, racing, fixing cars, it all feels cursed. Every victory reminds me of what I failed to protect. I do not deserve a second chance." His voice cracked, and for the first time that night, the unshakable Phantom looked breakable. Laura stepped forward, her eyes steady on him. "Michael, you deserve more than a life of punishment. I saw you tonight, focused, calm, alive. That is not the work of a man who is finished. That is the work of someone the world still needs," Olivia added softly, her tone laced with gratitude. "You just saved me $80,000, Michael. More than that, you reminded us what true talent looks like. Do not waste the gift. You still carry. It would dishonor their memory more to bury it than to use it." Michael's chest rose and fell. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to retreat into the shadows where pain was safer than hope. But Laura's words lingered. Olivia's faith pressed in, and Sterling's offer stood before him like a door he could choose to open. For the first time in years, Michael allowed himself to imagine something beyond grief, not forgetting his family, but honoring them, not erasing his past, but building from it. His voice was quiet, but steady. "If I do this, it will not be for money. It will be for them, for Emily, for Lily." Sterling nodded firmly. "That is all I ask." Laura smiled through tears. Olivia exhaled with relief. Ethan and Tom exchanged stunned glances, their earlier mockery replaced with awe. Only Victor seethed in silence, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked as if his teeth might crack. Within days, his downfall began. Word spread about how he had mocked a legend, about how he had nearly thrown away genius for the sake of pride. Clients withdrew. Their contracts, suppliers pulled out. His once thriving workshop emptied, leaving him surrounded by unpaid bills and bitter laughter. While Victor collapsed, Michael began to rise. He accepted Sterling's offer, stepping into a new chapter not as a beggar, not as a ghost, but as a man reclaiming his place in the world. The Phantom was alive again. Months had passed since that fateful day in the workshop. The whispers, the rumors, and the disbelief had long since faded. What replaced them was something far greater. A story that captured the imagination of the entire world. Netflix released a groundbreaking documentary titled The Phantom Returns. Its opening shots showed the raw streets where Michael once wandered as a forgotten man, contrasted with breathtaking footage of him conquering Formula One circuits. Audiences across the globe were stunned. The documentary didn't just show Michael Harris, the champion. It revealed Michael Harris, the human being. It told of his meteoric rise, his 3 legendary titles, his daring moves that earned him the name The Phantom. Then it bared the deepest wound of his life, the tragic loss of his wife and daughter, and the darkness that swallowed him whole. Yet, it didn't end there. The cameras captured his redemption, how a forgotten workshop and a young journalist, named Laura, had reignited the flame in him. His story was no longer about speed or trophies. It was about resilience, survival, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to let tragedy define his final chapter. Clips rolled of Michael now, confident, determined, not racing behind the wheel, but mentoring a new generation of engineers and drivers. He stood before cheering crowds, not as a shadow of the past, but as a leader with vision. The world no longer saw him as a broken man. They saw him as proof that greatness can rise again, even from ashes. And Laura was there, every step of the way. From the workshop to the world stage, she had become part of his new team, his story, his hope. The bond between them wasn't just professional, it was transformative. Together, they built not only machines, but legacies. In the closing scene, Michael stood before a massive audience, the lights of the stadium glistening in his eyes. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of experience. Do not judge a man by the clothes he wears or the battles he's lost. Judge him by the fire he carries within, because even a broken life can roar back to glory. The crowd erupted. The screen faded to black, and the Phantom Harris was no longer a forgotten name. He was an eternal symbol of strength.